All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video as we recap everything that happened in Niner land and all the Niner-related stories here on a Thursday. And of course, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being, or on a Wednesday, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out, and soon to open in 2026 in Petaluma. So thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being a title sponsor of the Krug Show. Also, quick shout out to our friends at Sleeper. You already know Sleeper for fantasy football and daily fantasy, but they've also rolled out something new called Team Picks. That's right. Team Picks is built right into Sleeper's app and lets you make simple predictions on game outcomes instead of worrying about player stats or setting lineups. You're just choosing which team you think is going to win. It's real easy. It's designed to be straightforward and easy to understand, especially if you like following games closely but don't want to deal with all that extra complexity. If you're already on Sleeper for fantasy, it's right there waiting for you. And if you're new, Sleeper continues to be an all-in-one platform for following your teams and staying connected to the action. All right, thanks to Sleeper for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. All right, let's talk a lot of Niner talk here on a Wednesday. Matt Miller, who's maybe one of my favorite draft guys, we had him on the show not that long ago, says the draft this year is loaded at wide receiver, linebacker, and safety, which is great news for the Niners because they probably need 2 wide receivers, 2 linebackers, and they need to find an impact safety. He said there's been a lot of talk about this draft class being down, but the wide receiver talent is really, really deep. We're going to see a ton of wideouts in the top 75 picks. So I agree. I was looking at some of the mock drafts, and where you see incredible value on day 3 is at linebacker and at wide receiver, which plays perfectly into what the 49ers need. Now, 319 draft prospects have been invited to the 2026 NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. There are some notable guys who did not get invited that I would be all over in this draft process. Tyron Montgomery, the wide receiver from John Carroll, who looked so good at the Senior Bowl, was not invited. Kalen Black and Mikhail Kamara, maybe the heart and soul of the national championship Hoosiers, was Kalen Black on offense and Mikhail Kamara on defense. Neither got invited to the Combine. I'd draft both those guys. The former Cal Bear who played at Oklahoma this last year, Jaden Ott, not invited to the Combine. Devin Marshall, the corner from NC State, he's super physical. Love him. Not invited to the Combine. Landon Robinson, the short defensive tackle from Navy, who's really an incredible interior pass rusher, not invited to the Combine. Shad Banks, the linebacker from Texas San Antonio, not invited to the Combine. Mark Gronowski, the quarterback for Iowa, the MVP of the Senior Bowl, not invited to the Combine. So, the Combine's great. It's always great to see these guys work out, find out who's a tremendous athlete, who's got athletic limitations. But just remember, you're not seeing the entire field of draft prospects because there's a bunch of guys, and there's a lot more than I just named there, that are not invited to the Combine. They're not one of the 319 prospects. For me, the most shocking one is Kalen Black. I mean, how can you be the number 1 back on the national championship Hoosiers and not get invited to the Combine? I mean, that's unbelievable. What a slight for Kalen Black. Dante Whitner listed his top 5 head coaches in the NFL. He's got Shanahan in the top 5, but he's got him at 5. He lists Mike McDonald as the best coach in football, followed by Sean McVay, Sean Payton, Andy Reid, and Kyle Shanahan at number 5. First of all, Andy Reid's probably got to be higher on that list. He's won rings. He's won multiple rings, and I would probably put him at the top of that list. I'd probably put McVay second on the list. And then if you want to go with, McDonald 4 and Shanahan 5, I get that. I do think Shanahan's a top 5 coach. I just don't think he's ever had enough talent to really get it done. Now, some people would say, oh, come on, Krug, they had Hall of Famers everywhere. Yeah, they had some great individual talent for sure, but I don't think they ever quite had enough talent across the board when you factor in the first year they went in Super Bowl 54. That was probably their best, most talented roster, but they had Jimmy G at quarterback, and it showed. He got outplayed in the biggest game by Patrick Mahomes. Then, by the time Purdy got in there 4 years later, the talent wasn't quite as good, and heck, that game could have gone to anybody. It went to the Chiefs in overtime. So what can you say? But I do think Shanahan's a top 5 coach. I'd probably agree with Whitner. Put him in the fifth overall. But how do you put Mike McDonald over Andy Reid? I mean, that's too much recency bias for me.
Around the holidays, it feels like scams are everywhere. And that's why I'm more careful than ever when I'm sending money, which is why Cash App really stands out to me. Scammers know the holidays are busy for everyone, which can make us all targets for scams. And that's why Cash App builds in protections to help keep your money safe while you're checking off your shopping list. If you're about to send money to someone for a deal that's just too good to be true and Cash App flags it as a potential scam, they'll warn you before you send the money. Cash App also gives you an extra layer of protection with features like security lock. You can require a PIN, Face ID, or a fingerprint to unlock your account and move money. So even if someone gets a hold of your unlocked phone at a holiday party or wherever, your money is right where you left it. For a limited time only, new Cash App customers can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash. For real, just download Cash App, use our exclusive referral code, SECURE10. Don't forget, it's Secure10. Use that in your profile. Send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App Bank partners. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Promotions provided by Cash App, a Block Inc. brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures.
Field Yates from ESPN had his latest mock draft. He has the Niners taking A&M wide receiver Casey Concepcion in round 1. That's an interesting pick. Concepcion, I mean, the Niners have tons of needs at receiver. Concepcion is an explosive mover. I think he's going to run in the low 4.3s in Indy. I don't know that I would pick him at the end of the first round. I don't think I'd take a wide receiver there. But man, if you want a guy who can separate, and the Niners could not separate at all against Seattle, Casey Concepcion would be a great option if you're looking for a wide receiver who can separate, because he can absolutely run. Dante Whitner says the Niners need to trade for Max Crosby. It's interesting. Everybody wants to trade for Max Crosby. I don't think the 49ers have the draft capital to trade for Crosby, and I don't think the Raiders would trade Crosby to the Niners. So what are we really talking about? Mark Davis doesn't want to see the Niners succeed, and he definitely doesn't want to see Max Crosby in a Niner uniform. And what would it cost? I bet you the price for the Niners would be a first and a second this year, and probably a first next year. And that's a lot to give up for a 30-year-old, soon-to-be 30-year-old defensive end. So even though Crosby's a great player, that's not the direction I would go. Chase Sr. is arguing that a Justin Jefferson trade, he says, would be perfect for the 49ers. He's exactly what the Niners offense needs, a game breaker who can inject fear into the vaunted Seattle defense. The Niners got zero separation against Seattle in the final 2 games against them. Seahawks DBs stuck to the Niner wide receivers like Velcro. So he's suggesting Justin Jefferson. Now, my first thought on that is no. It's just like, once again, the price tag is going to be really, really high. We'll talk more about Jefferson in a bit, but Matt Barrows in his mailbag says he doesn't think Jefferson is going to be moved, that he's going to stay in Minnesota. Now, the interesting other story today regarding Justin Jefferson is he has deactivated his IG account. So he also was quoted as saying that he doesn't see things working out with him in Minnesota, and he prefers to play with a quarterback that knows him well. And who knows him well? Well, he says, the Seahawks and the Bengals are at the top of his list. This is a concern. This is why the 49ers may need to call Minnesota and get them fired up on Mac Jones and a trade for Jefferson. Because if Jefferson winds up in Seattle opposite JSN, the Niners could be in a world of hurt. A world of hurt. I mean, that's the 2 best receivers in the game, potentially outside of Jamar Chase, on the same team. That would be a crushing blow to the 49ers. So hopefully, I don't think Jefferson's the right play, but I think you got to get in the deal flow, and you got to find out if he's going to Seattle. And if he's going to Seattle, you got to seriously try to make a preventative strike. See if you could offer Mac Jones. See if you could offer your number 1. I would try to block Jefferson from going to Seattle if I were the 49ers. I absolutely would. And if that's where he wants to go, God, John Schneider, I could see John Schneider making that pick. He's got cap room. He's had a lot of success in the draft. He knows he has JSN. They have Shaheed. Are they going to sign him? Probably not. You put Jefferson opposite JSN, and the whole league has a major problem. 49er Rams in Melbourne, Australia, reportedly was going to be played week 1 of the 2026 season. Reports came out today saying that that's going to be indeed the case. Matt Barrows weighed in on Mac Jones. He says, bottom line, I think the trade market for Jones will be robust, and there's a good chance that the 49ers get an offer they can't refuse. So, once again, as I said, with the Justin Jefferson thing, if you get Minnesota interested in Mac Jones, that might be the way to go. That might be the angle to pursue as far as offseason trades as it pertains to Mac Jones. People are suggesting Joey Bosa to the Niners, and he's an older player. He's got an injury history. I don't see how they get younger, faster, or better with him. But, if you look at his numbers in 2025 with Buffalo, he had a pass rush grade of 88.7, which was 7th out of 115 edge rushers. So he had a very good pass rush grade. He had 47 pressures, 30 hurries, 12 quarterback hits, and 5 sacks. Those 5 sacks would have led the Niners. So, Joey would love to play with Nick. Nick would love to play with Joey. The Bosas typically don't take any kind of pay cut or any kind of, haircut financially. But if you could convince Joey to take a little bit less, that wouldn't be bad. I'm not really in favor of it, but if you're looking for rush and you feel like he's the guy, you could do worse. Matt Barrows had his mailbag today, and I thought there was a number of really interesting things in there. He first says that he has heard that Raheem Morris is not making any sweeping changes to the defensive staff. They're going to find a new secondary coach because Daniel Bullocks went to Green Bay. Joe Woods, who interviewed for the DC job, Matt says is a possibility. He also says the team is looking at other options, including some college coaches, and they could make a hire by the end of the week. So that coming out of the Matt Barrows mailbag. Now, Matt also tackled the question, will the Niners trade Mac Jones? And he makes the point, and I think he's right, that Jones's processing skills are better than Sam Darnold's, and that he was extremely well-liked in the room, very popular player. And then, one of the other mailbag questions is what would be irresponsible for the Niners to turn down? What kind of price would be too big of a price for the Niners to turn down for Jones? And Matt says a second rounder or maybe a third rounder and a player. I would say the Niners price should be even higher. I think it should be 2 day 2 picks over the next 2 drafts and a player, and they shouldn't budge. He's probably the second best quarterback available behind Fernando Mendoza. He is the best quarterback available as far as veterans are concerned. So there's no doubt in my mind that I would want 2 day 2 picks and a player for Mac Jones, and I wouldn't budge. Matt was asked about Curtis Rourke, and he says, my sense is they see him as a possible number 3. If they trade Mac Jones, maybe he could be a number 2. One of the reports that is not yet circulating, but I saw yesterday, the Falcons are expected to release Kirk Cousins before the draft. So I think that's actually the play. You trade Mac Jones for 2 or 3 assets, you wait for Kirk Cousins to be released, and you sign Kirk Cousins as your number 2 quarterback. I think that's what I would do. I think that's what Shanahan ultimately will do. I think I like that option a little bit better than Zach Wilson and better than some of the other reclamation project quarterback ideas. Justin Fields, no. Zach Wilson, not an ideal fit. Marcus Mariota, a little older. Anthony Richardson, does he really have upside in a future as an NFL quarterback? I just think that if Cousins comes available, that's the ready-made number 2 quarterback. And you want a good number 2 quarterback because you saw what happened this year. You needed him, and he won 5 of the 8 games that he started. But Jones is too valuable to this team as a trade asset. But if you could trade Jones, get 2 or 3 assets, and go sign Kirk Cousins, I think you have the best of both worlds there, and that would be my prediction for what the Niners are likely to do. Matt was asked the question, can Shanahan beat McDonald? Can the Niners beat the Seahawks? And he said, I'm certain. This is an interesting answer from Barrows. He says, I'm certain Shanahan's system and his brain trust which includes offensive coordinator Clay Kubiak, can win against McDonald's defense. Now, we did see it in week 1, but it was a long time ago, and Seattle is better since that point, and the Niners are probably worse since that point. Matt goes on to say the Niners just didn't have the weapons to challenge Seattle's young, fast defense. There's a general lack of speed across the board on offense. He points out that the Niners' fastest ball carrier of the season was D. Winters' pick 6 against the Colts. I mean, that tells you, if that doesn't tell you you need more dynamic players at running back, then I don't know what does. When D. Winters has your best run of the year, and he's an inside linebacker, I mean, you're not fast enough. Matt was asked, with the Kittle injury, would it be a surprise if the Niners drafted the Oregon tight end Kenyon Sadiq, or possibly, or out of need or depth or looking to the future? And it's funny, Matt says that, that he looks at Sadiq and the Falcons free agent tight end, Kyle Pitts, in a similar fashion. He said Shanahan could move both around the field, including the F or the big slot spot at which Jennings often lined up. Yeah, I think this makes sense. I mean, Pitts would be a great get for the Niners. If the Niners could get Kyle Pitts, I mean, I think he's going to have 5 really great years right now. So that would be the guy that I would go for in free agency. And Matt seems to like him a lot. Matt was asked, what are the Niners going to do with Bryce Huff and his $17 million price tag? And he points out, man, they love Bryce Huff, but $17 million is an awful lot to pay for a player who finished with 4 sacks and not a single sack after week 7. My guess is they work out some kind of extension with Huff that keeps him here but lowers his salary for this year. That would be my guess. I think Huff's going to stay because I don't think they want to get rid of any good pass rushers, and he definitely is one. But I don't think he's going to stay at $17 million. I think they'll work that out and renegotiate that dollar. Matt was asked a very interesting question. When will teams begin to cut players, and which release players would the 49ers go after in free agency? He says it usually happens the week before free agency, which you're looking about the beginning of March. So we're still 2, 3, 4 weeks away from that. But you'll start to see names released, I would say, in the next 21 days for sure. And he mentions Green Bay's defensive end Rashawn Gary. Now, I've been targeting Gary for a while now. To me, this is the guy. I know people saying Trey Hendrickson, it's going to cost you a ton. Max Crosby, it's going to cost you a ton of money and picks. Rashawn Gary had 7.5 sacks. They just traded for Micah Parsons. They can't afford Rashawn Gary. He's 280 pounds. He's only 26 or 27. He's very, very young. I think this is the upside play. To me, you put Rashawn Gary opposite Nick Bosa, and you've got something. And you've got a bigger guy that can set the edge in the run game and still make big impact on third down. So that's the guy that I would target at the top of the list for the defensive end, Rashawn Gary. And as far as one other guy, I think the Commanders are going to release Nick Allegretti, the former center and guard, and I think he would be a great get for the Niners. He gives you coverage behind Brendel. If Brendel is not good, he can plug him in at left guard for Burford, who I think is going to get a more lucrative offer and bolt in free agency. Nick Allegretti almost signed with the Niners before he signed with the Commanders a year or two ago, and I just think that he's smart, he's tough, he's assignment sound, he's versatile, he's a great guy. I think that's the guy that I would go for as an interior player. If you could get Rashawn Gary and Nick Allegretti off of the cap casualty lane of purchasing, I think that's where I would go. Matt was asked, what B and C list free agents do you see the Niners targeting? And he mentioned a couple Falcons, Caden Ellis and Arnold Ebiketie. Ebiketie's an edge rusher from Penn State. Ellis is a linebacker. They both played for Raheem Morris in Atlanta. I like the Ebiketie one. I'll throw one more name in there. How about Kobe Durant, who played corner for the Rams for Raheem Morris? Durant developed nicely under Morris. I think you can never have enough good corners, and I think that would be a great get for the Niners. He also was asked the question, what do you think the Niners would trade for Max Crosby? And he said he thinks they'd give up a second rounder and try to throw Mac Jones in the deal. Do the Raiders want Mac Jones? And as far as Jefferson, Mac doesn't think that Jefferson's going to be traded. For you NFL draft fans, ESPN understands where their audience is. And starting today, February 11th, the ESPN is going to have a brand new show called NFL Draft Daily. They've had this show with Field Yates and Mel Kiper called First Draft. It's been doing incredibly well according to the ratings. And people are recording it and watching it. And the draft is so big that NFL Draft Daily is now going to premiere today. And it will be a weekday, everyday show on ESPN. That's how much they're into the draft. It will be hosted by Field Yates, Mel Kiper, Louis Riddick, and Matt Miller. And if you're a draft fan, this is going to be a must-see, a must-watch for you. You know, that's how big the draft is. It's February, and the draft's not till April, and ESPN is going to give an hour-long show in the major time block, 3 o'clock Eastern, which will be repeated later in the day, noon on the West Coast. They're going to put this on, and they're going to replay it later in the day, and it's going to get big ratings because the NFL is absolutely king. Chad Reuter does a 3-round mock draft. He has the Niners taking in the first round Keldrick Falk out of Auburn. In the second round, taking Deion Burks out of Oklahoma. In the third round, taking Colin Wright, a corner out of Stanford. Man, if the draft falls that way, I think the Niners would be thrilled. Falk is 285 pounds. In a lot of ways, he is an ideal fit for the 49ers 4-3 when they want a bigger body defensive end, and he's a tremendous player. I don't think he'll be there at 27. I think he goes way before that. If he falls to 27, man, that would be a tough guy to pass up. He is a really, really nice player. Deion Burks is a 5'9" receiver for Oklahoma who was John Mateer's favorite target. Burks has got vertical speed. I really like him. He's explosive. He's probably one of like the 6 or 7 receivers that I really like in this draft. And then Colin Wright, I think that's way too early for Colin Wright. I think he's more of a 5th round pick. He's a corner from Stanford. I bet you the Niners would like to have him with the Stanford connection that John Lynch has. And Colin Wright, you know, the Niners would go to the Stanford Pro Day, and the Niners could always use more corners, but not in the 3rd round. That's way, way too early, in my estimation, for him. I'll tell you one plan that wouldn't be bad for the Niners in this draft. How about just draft a bunch of Indiana guys? D'Angelo Pons, they're saying, is working out, running sub 4.4. He's an awesome corner. Think of Upton Stout with more speed. Kalen Black, the running back, is 5'8", 210, 208 pounds, something like that. He reminds me a lot of Emmitt Smith. Tremendous heart, moves the pile. I love Kalen Black. He's one of my favorite players in the draft. Omar Cooper, the wide receiver, and Elijah Surratt. I mean, you got 2 big-time receivers there. I like Cooper in the 3rd round. I like him a little bit more than Surratt. Neither are really special, but I think Cooper is a chain mover. He's tough. He's going to be good right away. And then to me, the day 3 sleepers for Indiana, Mikhail Kamara. I don't care that he's 6 feet tall. He's 260 pounds, and he can rush the quarterback, and he blocked a field goal or blocked a punt in the national title game. Mikhail Kamara is a beast. And then Pat Coogan, the center, former Notre Dame center who transferred to Indiana. I think Coogan, you know, he lacks some speed. He lacks some physicality. But, man, I really like Coogan. He's a culture player. He's tough. He's a leader. Draft this guy as the replacement for Jake Brendel. And, you know, in a year from now, give Coogan the job full time. He's tough. And he led a really good Notre Dame run game. And then he came to Indiana and blocked for Kalen Black. And he's terrific. And he was the MVP of the Rose Bowl, if you can believe it. And one last Niner note, Kyle Posey, our good friend from Niners Nation, has a really good idea as far as wide receiver. He says the Niners need a wide receiver who thrives in the intermediate level. They also need someone who can excel on short and deep levels. And he's suggesting Romeo Doubs. And I think, you know, I like Romeo Doubs, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Alec Pierce in the free agent market for the Niners at wide receiver. I like Doubs the most of the 3. Wan'Dale's smaller and easier to cover. Pierce is going to get more money because he's drafted higher and he's considered better. But I think Doubs is the best of the 3. Doubs is 6'2". He played at Nevada, so he probably is willing to live on the West Coast. He turns 26 in April. He caught 55 passes last season with an average depth of 12.9 yards per catch. He was the first down machine for Green Bay. 76.4% of his receptions moved the chains and were first down getting catches. So Dobbs is incredible. He had 124 yards on 8 receptions in the playoffs. He had 5 receptions of 20-plus yards, so he's a downfield threat. You know, he could take over on that third and Jawan role. I totally agree with Kyle Posey on this one. Dobbs caught 13 of his 24 targets on third down, 12 resulting in a first down for an average of 14.3 yards per reception. That's phenomenal. And then when you look at what his price tag is estimated to be, they're saying Dobbs is going to command somewhere around $12 million per year. I'd give this guy a 3-year, $36 million deal and you know, bring him in. And I would jump it for day one of free agency. Get that receiver. If I could trade for a receiver and sign a guy like Romeo Dobbs, I think that's what I would do going into the draft. And then if I find a receiver that I like in the draft, great. But receivers in the draft take time to develop, and the Niners don't really have time. They have to put whatever receivers they acquire this offseason have got to be out on the field producing for them this year. So I think the veteran route makes sense. Dobbs would be my favorite free agent. I'm not interested in getting involved on a real number one guy like Jefferson, but if I got to get in that deal flow if I'm John Lynch. And if I find out he's going to Seattle, I got to hold that. I got to head that off. You can't have the Rams with Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua and good tight ends, and then have the Seahawks with JSN, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Barner, and Elijah Arroyo, 2 really good tight ends. And then you've got Arizona with Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, Trey McBride. I mean, you could make an argument that the best receiving triumvirates in all of football reside in your division. So you cannot let Justin Jefferson get to Seattle. I think if you're the 49ers, you got to see if you can get involved in that deal flow and make an offer and see if you can get Mac Jones, get Minnesota interested in Mac Jones, and maybe you could get Jefferson in a deal coming back that involves Jones and maybe a pick or 2. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Those are the headlines on this Wednesday. I hope everybody's having a great Wednesday. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. Thanks to our good friends at Sleeper. There's links in the description for all of our sponsors. And thanks to you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.